It has now been 2 days since Fox News unceremoniously dumped their 8 p.m. host, Tucker Carlson. We just heard from him for the first time. In a video posted to Twitter tonight, Carlson shared what he's learned from taking a whole 48 hours away from TV, not voluntarily. It didn't take any shots at Fox, only the mysterious forces that want to silence him.
When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink, and they become weaker.
We're not going to play the whole thing because really, who needs to hear it? But notably, Tucker never mentions his former employer by name. And he seems to have a good reason for that. Rolling Stone reports that Fox News executives have in their possession a dossier of alleged dirt on Tucker Carlson that they are ready to deploy should he attack the network in the wake of his departure. Sources say the file includes internal complaints regarding workplace conduct, disparaging comments about management and colleagues, allegations he created a toxic work environment. According to new reporting tonight from the New York Times, listen to this. On the eve of the Dominion defamation trial, Fox discovered new texts sent by Tucker, one of which was, quote, particularly offensive, adding to the concern at the top of the company. Now, we've heard some of these sorts of allegations directly from Tucker's former producer, Abby Grossberg, who worked for him, who appeared on this network yesterday to talk about the sexism lawsuit that she filed against Fox for a hostile workplace. Of course, there's a long history of toxicity that Grossberg describes at the network. Back in 2016, you might remember, host Gretchen Carlson sued longtime Fox CEO Roger Ailes for sexual harassment. That kicked off a cascade of similar accusations that ultimately led to Ailes' resignation. Now, Gretchen Carlson is speaking out about Tucker's firing, writing in an opinion piece to the Daily Beast. It is, quote, meaningless without real change at Fox News. And Gretchen Carlson, former Fox News anchor, who opened the floodgates in the fight to expose harassment at the network, joins me now, co-founder of the organization Lift Our Voices. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Well, what do you think about all this?
A lot's happened in the last couple of minutes. First of all, let me be clear that there's no relation between Tucker Carlson and Gretchen Carlson.
Oh, yeah, yes. That's funny. I should have noted that in my copy, but yes, zero.
I get that all the time on Twitter.
An accident of...
Yes, I'm very quick to say absolutely not. Look, I am not surprised at all of what has transpired here. But I think it's interesting that there's so much focus on what he may have said about executives. I actually think that the Abby Grossberg lawsuit and her claims of continued misogyny and sexual harassment at a network that says they've cleaned up their act since my case, I actually think that that's paramount in this whole thing. I think that had a lot more to do with why he was fired than anything about Dominion.
Well, and we should say that her, her allegations are just sort of textbook. Man, I can't say those allegations are true. They're just allegations. She's filed a lawsuit. Are textbook hostile workplace allegations. And they come on the heels. It's not just your case. I mean, I was going back through the records here, and there have been multiple lawsuits, often settled, sometimes involving talent, sometimes involving executives, over and over and over and over in that company around specifically an atmosphere of sexual harassment and a hostile workplace.
Yes, but the interesting thing is that after my case and after the firing of Roger Ailes and so many other women came forward, Fox made a big point of saying that they had changed their culture. But I have two things to say about that. The Abby Grossberg lawsuit and her claims apparently prove that's not the case. And number two is, if they have changed so dramatically, why do they continue to still silence me and not allow me to get out of my non-disclosure agreement, which I have demanded that they do so? I mean, if they've changed, then what are they nervous about with regard to having full transparency and me being able to own my own truth?
You settled with the company and signed a non-disclosure agreement in which you can't speak about your time there, right, and specifically about your case. This has obviously been a tool that's been used, not just at Fox, but lots of places. And in fact, there's been a sort of push for some reforms to that in the wake of kind of the Me Too movement.
Well, thanks to our organization, Lift Our Voices, we've been spearheading that move. We passed 2 bipartisan federal bills last year, one to eradicate non-disclosure agreements for sexual misconduct, pre-dispute cases in the workplace, the other to eradicate something called forced arbitration clauses, which is the other way that you silence bad behavior at work. On the first day of work, you sign these clauses. You have no idea what you're signing. Then something bad happens to you 5 years later, and for all practical purposes, you're screwed because you've signed already that you're going to go to these secret chambers to adjudicate your claims.
Well, and as I think we're seeing, and again, I can't speak to whether Abby Grossberg's allegations are true. Fox denies them. It's also key, and particularly at a place like, I mean, Fox is a repeat offender in this respect. There have been multiple settlements, multiple lawsuits. We're now in 2023 where we have another one. We have it on the heels of what is the largest defamation settlement, or the second largest, well, the largest settlement in all time. What do you think about the reverberations of the Dominion lawsuit on top of the reporting we have tonight that possibly texts that were discovered in the course of that lawsuit were part of the straw that broke the camel's back?
I think they're all interrelated, because had you not had this spectacular discovery of Dominion in unearthing all of these texts and much more information, you wouldn't then be giving more ammunition to Smartmatic and their case. You wouldn't then be giving more ammunition to Abby Grossberg and what she alleges happened, right? So they're all intertwined. So you could argue that the Murdochs finally said, you know, enough, because Tucker Carlson has his fingerprints in all of these different areas. I still think, though, that her case, because they said they've cleaned up culture there, I still think that that one supersedes anything else.
You know, the cable news is a weird business, but one of the things that that we know that folks at Fox, as a matter of public record, are obsessed with are ratings. And they're totally obsessed with them, to the extent that they have these minute by minutes, and they've got these, you know, folks who are sitting in editorial meetings telling them you got to do this because it'll. And in fact, that was the origin. If you listen to Dominion's theory of the case in that lawsuit that settled, it was the challenge that was coming from Newsmax and OAN. In the aftermath of the election, when they were going fully on the big lie, Fox was sort of one step in, one step out. That kind of got Fox to go along with it. Well, last night, Newsmax did 5x their normal viewers.
Yeah, but that happened before.
I'm saying they're back in the same place that got them there.
Right. So 2 full years later now, they have the same threat because people have alternatives, right? For the longest time, Fox was the only conservative outlet. Now you have OAN and Newsmax, who apparently are going to go all in, no pun intended, for being completely right-wing, right? And so the people who wanted to hear the rhetoric of Tucker Carlson are now going to go over to these outlets. But that was the fear that was placed before Fox 2 years ago. So they're back to the same place now.
I mean, there's something perverse and fascinating about that, right? I mean, I think our intuitions are that monopoly is bad and competition's better. Right? Like, competition's a good thing. There shouldn't just be one person selling shoes. There should be 3 people selling shoes. And in this case, when competition starts to ramp up, what do they compete towards?
Exactly. But I also believe that if this was strictly about Dominion, that they would have gotten rid of more people. They may still. But why was it only Tucker Carlson, right? Because plenty of other hosts were talking about the same lies, and the executives knew about the lies and still allowed it to be on their air.
In fact, there are other hosts in the Dominion filings who are more specifically being called out by the executives, who are more specifically, you know, seem to be endorsing. Maria Bartiromo is one example on Fox Business, who seems to, both we will say in public and in private, to be endorsing this theory, and nothing happened there.
And what I call out in my op-ed is that if Fox really wants to have a genuine recommitment to journalism, albeit with a conservative point of view,
right,
but at least truths, then they really have to clean house completely. Because what has typically happened at Fox is when you get rid of a Bill O'Reilly, you put a Tucker Carlson in there, and they get even higher ratings, right?
The point is that why would they want? They don't want to do that. They want to make money.
Right.
I mean,
they
don't want to do that.
But they
never wanted to do that.
But they have a business decision to make, because I think there's been a complete shift in the old Fox and the Fox of the last 5 to 7 years.
I am skeptical on that.
Well, in this one way,
right,
about specific.
There's less control. Roger Ailes is not controlling
that's right,
everything. Yes,
that's right.
Yes,
and
yes.
One could argue
the horses are bucking against the rider.
One could argue that it's a rudderless ship,
yeah,
and that is how we got to this position. One could also argue this may not have happened under the old regime.
That, I think, is an interesting one. Ailes, for all of his prodigious faults, had a keener sense of how to keep things out of the danger zones, like the $800 million defamation danger zone that they ended up with. The op-ed you mentioned is in the Daily Beast. It's titled "Firing Tucker is Meaningless Without Real Change at Fox News." Gretchen Carlson, great to have you here in studio.
Thanks for
so
having
much.
me.